Juan Cole has a great article up on his website, juancole.com, about the top 10 differences between white terrorists and others, at least from the point of view of how it's reported in mainstream media. And these are fascinating because they really sum up exactly what we've been talking about on this show for years at this point when it comes to domestic terrorism versus so-called, foreign terrorism, I guess would be the distinction to make, or non-white terrorism as it is here. White terrorists are called gunmen. What does that even mean? A person with a gun? Wouldn't that be like everyone in the U.S. who owns guns? Other terrorists are called terrorists. Very, very good point.
Yeah, definitely.
Number 2, white terrorists are always troubled loners. Other terrorists are suspected of being part of a global plot, even when they're obviously just troubled loners. We saw that with the underwear bomber. We saw that as we researched further into Fort Hood. There's always the assumption that when it's non-white, it's part of a conspiracy. Right. No question about it. Doing a study on the danger of white terrorists at the Department of Homeland Security would get you sidelined by angry white congressmen. Doing studies on other kinds of terrorists is guaranteed promotion. What we're alluding to here is Peter King, congressman from New York's hearings on dangerous American Muslims, completely ignoring the countless incidents of white domestic terrorism in the United States.
By Christians.
In many cases by Christians. The family of a white terrorist is interviewed, weeping as they wonder what went wrong. The families of other terrorists are almost never interviewed. Absolutely. I mean, think about the underwear bomber. Was there any effort to talk to his family and to give their side of the story and the impact that this may have had on them? There's not even a remote interest in seeking out that story. Mm-hmm. No question about it. White terrorists are always part of a fringe. Other terrorists are apparently mainstream. White terrorists are random events like tornadoes. Other terrorists are long-running conspiracies. Again, part of that same thing. White terrorists are never called white. Other terrorists are given ethnic affiliations. Absolutely, which we've been talking about. Muslim extremist terror.
Right.
Common. Mm-hmm. White terror? Did we hear white terror when it was the Aurora, Colorado Batman shooting? No, we didn't hear that. We didn't hear that with the Sikh shooting. We're not hearing that with this one.
Right. Usually just hear the age along with gunmen.
Absolutely. Nobody thinks white terrorists are typical of white people, but other terrorists are considered paragons of their societies. Absolutely. When you hear of a Muslim terror incident, it's very common to hear people saying, it's Muslims. It's Muslims. Muslims are the problem. In fact, the Peter King hearings are based on that exact fact. However, you never hear white people are the problem. White people are terrorists.
Yeah.
You just don't hear that.
Right. I think, unfortunately, for most Americans, because of the portrayal in the media, even when you just say terrorists, the first thing to come to mind is someone
who is not
white,
white,
someone Muslim,
right?
Whatever.
Okay. Last 2: white terrorists are alcoholics, addicts, or mentally ill. We're already seeing that with Thomas Kafal. And other terrorists are apparently clean living and perfectly sane. Right. We never talk about the mental stability of any Muslim terrorist when we hear about the underwear bomber, we hear about what goes on overseas. It was discussed a little bit with the Fort Hood shooting. I think that in that case it did come up at least in some kind of tangential way. And lastly, there's nothing you can do about white terrorists. Gun control won't stop them. No policy you make, no government program would impact them. But hundreds of billions of dollars must be spent on police and the Department of Defense and on TSA, which must virtually strip search 60 million people a year to deal with the non-white terrorists. Couldn't have said it better myself.
Yeah, it's definitely accurate.
Excellent stuff. Check out juancole.com for the whole article.